Hi, I'm Ted Haftegabber, founder and producer of Live Talks Los Angeles. Thanks for joining us. Since we started over a decade ago, we have brought you hundreds of conversations with storytellers, writers, actors, musicians, humorists, chefs, and thought leaders in business and science. You can watch and hear most of these in our YouTube channel and our podcast. For details, visit livetalksla.org. And now, here's the show you've tuned in to see.
We didn't plan this, but how amazing is this color
How cool do we look?
explosion?
Thanks everyone for coming. Do we have any fellow truth and transcendence seekers in the room today?
Yeah.
Woo! You can woo that. Gretchen, I wanted to start off with a quote from your book that I love. It's, "The more we know, the more we notice." You know, when did you come up with that quote, and why did you come up with that quote?
Well, because I realized that as I learned more and more about things, I began to notice more and more. So, like, I went to Flavor University and learned how flavor works, and then I started to notice things so much more. And same thing with perfume. I took a perfume class and I started noticing how smell worked more. And I would read about the science of sight, and all of a sudden I would be able to see more clearly. And when I went to the Met, if I knew more about the objects there, I would be able to they would jump out at me. And so, yeah, I feel like I really felt that it was true the more I explored it.
I can honestly say, reading your book, I just feel such a greater depth of consciousness everywhere I go.
That's so great. That's exactly
amazing.
what I wanted. Yes. Because what I do doesn't really matter. It's more like if you get fired up to do it yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And so tell me about the routine doctor's visit that you went to.
So this was when I had my big epiphany about the five senses, and it was such an ordinary moment. I had pink eye, as one does, and it would not go away, so I finally went to the eye doctor, and on my way out, just very casually, like, be sure to wear your sunscreen or drink enough water. He said, well, be sure to come back for your checkup, because as you know, you're more at risk of losing your vision. And I was like, what are you talking about? I don't know that. And he said, yeah, you're very, very nearsighted, and so that gives you a greater chance of having a detached retina, and if that happens, it could affect your vision, and we would want to catch it right away. And as it happened, I had a friend who had just lost some of his vision to a detached retina. So that really hit me, and I go out on the street, and I live in New York City, so I was getting ready to walk home, and and of course I knew intellectually that we can lose anything at any time, and I knew that, intellectually, if I did lose my sight or my senses, I could still have a rich, meaningful life. But I was just feeling like, oh my gosh, I could lose all of this, everything that I'm seeing all around me. And then I thought, but I'm taking it all for granted. I didn't notice a single thing on my way here. I think, oh my gosh, my sight, but I'm not looking at anything. And all of a sudden, like, with that realization, it was like every knob in my brain just like got jammed up to 11, and I could see everything with perfect clarity, and I could hear every sound on a separate track, and I could smell every smell, smelly New York City. And my walk home, I was just like, all this is happening all the time, and I'm just not paying any attention to any of it. I'm just stuck in my head. I'm in this fog. And I've been studying happiness for so long. As you know, we've been talking about happiness forever. And I realized this was the missing piece. I had sensed that there was something that I was missing, and this was it. And that my five senses were the way that I could really get that connection, that vital connection that I still felt like I was missing.
So you're living life in 5D.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I don't know
exactly.
If some physicists would tell
Instead
me
of
that
like
wasn't right, but
a flat page, which
yeah.
is what I felt like I was. Yeah.
What does that feel like? What does it feel like to live in 5D? Do you ever get overwhelmed? Is it ever too much?
Well, it's interesting because I do notice more. In general, I would say I notice much more. And if you notice more music, you also notice more noise. And more perfume, more stink. But I think I like it because it gives depth to everyday life. Like I have more highs and more lows. But I will say that I do pick up on more negative. Like I was on the plane to come here, and I opened up my book because everybody was sitting down, and they were playing music. And I'm like, I don't like music to play when I'm reading. Some people do, but I do not. And I was like, I really want to turn off that music, but I can't because I'm sitting on an airplane. And I don't think that before I would have noticed. I think I would have just tuned it out, but now that I'm more aware, but I still think it's better. I would still rather be more aware.
That actually happened to me the other day. I was practicing one of your techniques.
Oh, good.
I was smelling everything.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh, I've never smelled all this stuff
Yeah.
around me in Santa Monica.
Yeah, it's
before.
a lot of smells.
Yeah, it's a lot. I
Yeah.
can't wait to go back to New York
Yeah,
now.
yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. It's a lot. It's a lot. Yeah.
He outed me. He said I live on the beach even though I'm a professor.
Yeah.
But, in Columbia.
Yeah. Later on, he'll explain how to manage that.
Yeah, I haven't been outed yet about that, but I was tonight. But anyway, what does it mean to live in your own unique sensory world? I just want to savor that phrase, unique sensory world. What is that? It feels beautiful, but
Yes.
describe what it means.
So this was one of the most surprising things that I learned from writing this book. Because again, kind of intellectually you realize, like, sure, we all live in a slightly different world, and it's partly our genetics, and it's our experiences, and it's our culture and our upbringing. And, but it's bonkers to really be confronted with it.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's just a few examples. So Elizabeth and I record our podcast. Yes, Elizabeth is here. And I'm in my home office in New York City. And I'm here in my little home office, And our producer will have to say, stop, there's a siren. And I don't hear it. My brain I hear sirens all the time. My brain takes it out. In LA, people don't hear helicopters because it's just whatever is so aware. Again, we can't smell our home the way a guest smells it because you will not smell your home. And somebody else is coming in and their eyes are watering from the air freshener or whatever, and you cannot smell it. And then the dress, remember the dress? How many people saw white and gold? And then how many people saw blue and black? Do you remember this?
The dress. Oh,
the dress.
Yeah,
the 2015 viral sensation.
I
mean, it's blue and black, and I cannot see it as blue and black.
People got divorced over that, apparently.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, they're like, we have incompatible worldviews.
Well, I mean, this is the thing. You really are experiencing a different world.
Yeah.
And then I had a funny thing happen with my daughter Eleanor. So I'm kind of an underbuyer, so I every year I'm like, I should buy a paperwhite narcissus for the holidays. And then I don't because I'm like, why would you buy a flower? I'll buy it next year. But this year I'm like, I am writing a book about the 5 senses. I'm going to buy that flower. So I bought this paperwhite narcissus. I love the smell, very distinctive smell of paperwhites. And so Eleanor, a few days go by, and Eleanor's, she was just sitting next to me, and I was like, oh, I love the smell of the paperwhites. And she's like, oh, I didn't know they had a smell. And she leaned in and smelled, and she goes, oh my gosh, I detest that smell. And she goes, actually, I kind of thought maybe we had a dead mouse somewhere. I'm so relieved to know that that's what this is. So she thought it was a horrible smell. I thought it was a beautiful smell. But the interesting thing was a couple days go by, and then she said to me, I kind of like the smell too, now that I know what it is. Because when the context of her mind was like, okay, maybe it's a dead mouse, she thought it was a terrible smell. And then as she became used to it and knew that it was a flower and it was something that I liked, then she started to perceive it differently. So it's the same smell, but her perception started to change.
Wow.
And so we live in different sensory worlds.
Paul Bloom has a book about pleasure.
Yes,
And
how pleasure works, right?
Everything is about the expectation of pleasure.
Yes.
If we can psych ourselves up, that anything's going to be amazing, we tend to experience it as amazing.
Yeah.
I don't know how that relates.
Well, no, and there's all sorts of fascinating research.
Like it relates, yeah.
If you know that if I tell you this wine costs $1,000, you will actually register it, in your brain, you will show more pleasure. Or if you're really ecologically minded, and I'm like, oh, this coffee is more ecologically, observant than that one, you will actually perceive it as tasting better.
Yeah, if you charge more for your classes,
Yes. Yes.
wife, Krista, I think who's in the audience, she was like, charge more because people will.
Well, there's a whole marketing thing, which is like if your product doesn't sell well, double the price, and people will buy it.
They'll think it's double the quality.
Yeah. So a lot of it is expectations. In fact, in an earlier version of the book, I wanted to have additional senses that I was calling human senses, and one of the things I was playing with was the idea of expectations, like pattern, expectations, imagination. Yeah.
You cover so many ways that the power of our senses can impact our lives. I want to go through a couple of them, but one is to stop snacking late at night.
Oh, yes.
Help me with that.
Okay.
Please, for the love of God.
Right. Yeah.
One.
Okay, so when you go snacking,
Yeah.
like you're either feeling listless or restless or bored, probably, right? And so one of the things that you can do is, so you're reaching for your sense of taste to give yourself a little charge. And so you can reach for a different sense. So like I love the sense of smell, and so I could smell something really interesting or that I really love, or, but I'm not that into music, but maybe you love music, and so you'll listen to some new music. Maybe you like save it up and you're like, oh, I'll listen to it when I need a little bit of a jolt of pleasure. And in thinking about it, I was like, okay, why does this work? There's sort of two reasons I can think. One is you're just distracted. So you're heading for the fridge, and then you're like, no, I've got to go smell this, coconut sunscreen that I like, or, baby lotion. I just bought a travel thing of baby lotion just so I could smell it, Johnson's baby lotion. And so you're distracted. So instead of going to the kitchen and going somewhere else, and then, as one does, you just like lose your train of thought and you go off and do something else. Or maybe it really is that you're just looking for a jolt and you need some kind of sensory stimulation, and that's what you're looking for to give you that boost of energy. And it doesn't really matter what it is. Like it could have been the taste, or it could have been the sense of hearing or sight. Maybe it's both. But in either case, it seems like people find this to be a very useful thing to do. You just tap into a different sense.
Awesome. What about like sleeping better? Can you help me with that too?
So here's one that I find works really well is listening to a soothing podcast. And what you can do with a podcast, which is great, is that you can have it turn off after 15 minutes or 30 minutes. It's enough to hold your attention so that if you tend to ruminate, it occupies your mind, so you're not like working yourself up with worry. It's catching your attention. But it's not so interesting that you don't want to like listen to a suspenseful book where you're like, oh, I'm like hanging on the edge of my seat. So it's been nice to hear some people listen to Happier. We're very happy to help people fall asleep. We wear that with pride. Though sometimes we hope that it's interesting. But like I listen to In Our Time, which is this British it's a BBC podcast where it's like the Peloponnesian War, and 3 academics will discuss it. It's very interesting, but it's also very, it's very monotone. No one's fighting. It's just like, the Corn Law. Discuss. And that's very soothing. And then there are some podcasts that are made specifically, like Sleep With Me. It's like he's deliberately trying to make you sleepy. I find that too boring and like to me that doesn't work. I need something that is a little bit interesting. But that's a great thing to do. I find that that's really helpful, especially for people who like have night thoughts that keep them awake.
Yeah, for sure. I think they make special headphones that
yes.
that give you these kinds of music and sounds and things.
Yeah, and they're flat, so that if you want to,
Right.
if you're like with somebody who doesn't want to listen.
They always get like stuck in my ears, and
Yeah.
I can never
Yeah.
get them out. I think there's one in my ear right now.
Well, for you,
never got out.
Yeah, he never
Yeah,
came out.
yeah, it
Well,
scares me.
I'm lucky because my husband also likes to. So we used to
Yeah.
listen to all night radio, which
Yeah.
shocks people, but we would, and now we will listen to a
There's something
podcast.
really special about
Yeah,
about
I listen-
radio, just radio. Like
yeah.
who listens to the radio anymore, as opposed to
Yeah.
like from their computer.
Right,
Like,
right.
Who has a
right.
radio?
10/10 wins.
Like
yeah,
actually
yeah.
buy a radio.
Right.
You know, who
It's
does
old
that?
school.
What about talking to strangers? Right? Can this help that too? Right?
So a great thing if you're really stuck and you don't know what to say to somebody, and and sometimes it'll be this thing where you can tell that everybody's very eager to talk, but no one can figure out how to start. A great thing to think about is, what is it that we're all experiencing right now that we share? So if we were at a party, I could say to you, oh my gosh, I love this song and I cannot remember the title. Do you remember the title of this song? Because it doesn't even really matter if you do or not. We're talking about it. Or, oh my gosh, the hors d'oeuvres look so good. Have you tried anything? Can you recommend anything? And again, it doesn't matter what you say. It just can get us talking. Or like, hey, it's interesting. These exit lights are green. In New York, they're red. I wonder, is that like a regulatory thing? Like what? It doesn't matter what you say, but by reaching for something that we're both experiencing, it gets us talking.
What a great icebreaker.
Yeah.
Like, something smells fishy here.
Yeah.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
And then,
yeah. It's probably better to say something positive because of all the research about first impressions.
I messed up.
Yeah. They go, okay, try again. Yeah.
Something smells delightful here.
Yeah,
huh?
there you go.
But I feel like that's creepy, though.
That's true. Well, yeah.
Why did that feel creepy?
Yeah. Or you could.
Is it you?
Yeah. Did you notice? Yeah. Smell is intimate. There's something kind of illicit about smell.
I feel like I want to stay away from the smell conversation.
Yeah.
I just realized that.
Yeah, but you could say something like the food smells delicious,
or
the
food.
flowers
Yeah,
smell
the
delicious.
flowers.
Those things are legit.
Have you smelled the flowers?
Yeah.
I highly recommend that.
Yeah.
Highly recommend that. Okay, this one's super. You're actually helping me with all my problems.
Oh, this is good. I aim to please.
The next one is calming your anxiety.
Okay.
I'm a neurotic mess.
Okay. Well, one of the things I found that was really interesting about the sense of touch is I think we're all very familiar with things like fidget spinners, pop toys, therapy dough, weighted blankets. So there's a lot more awareness.
Speaking my language.
Yeah. There's a lot more awareness of that. But what I found is that, and one of the things that was fascinating about writing this book was there were things about my own behavior that I either had never even noticed or had always kind of mystified me, but that now made sense. So one of the things that I had never really noticed that I did that was a pattern of my behavior is that I would often be holding a pen. Like I have a pen in my pocket right now. And if I were really anxious, I'm not really anxious, Scott, because I like talking to you.
Yeah, like
I would have the pen in my hand. And it's like, there's no paper. I'm not going to actually write something. But I found that this is something that I find very grounding. And like, I went to a party. This is like, I truly knew no one there. I'm like, I'm going to go to this party, and I'm just going to have to figure out.
That's a pen moment.
I'm like, and I just held the pen, and it was like a prop that made me feel grounded. And I thought that was sort of idiosyncratic, but I've talked to a lot of people, like a clipboard.
Yeah. That's why I'm growing a beard.
There you go, because you can do that.
A little bit.
I heard from several teachers who were very anxious when they were teaching by video the first couple of times, like it made them very uneasy, so they would hold a mug or even just a stone that they would pass from hand to hand.
Oh, nice.
A lot of people will hold a water bottle. It's just something, and a photographer was saying that because people often are uncomfortable when their picture is taken, if you give people something to hold, it helps them like feel grounded and oriented. So it's just, sometimes it's just a little thing that you can do, and it's very unobtrusive. So if you're holding a fidget spinner, that's like a thing, but if you're just holding a pen, so you can reach for something like that to help calm yourself.
This is great. I hope people are taking notes.
Yeah. By the book, it's all in the book.
That's what I should have said is don't take notes, buy her book.
Yeah, that's right.
Let me rewind.
Yeah.
Okay, how about this one? I want to become luckier.
Oh.
I feel like I'm not lucky.
Well, you know all the research on luck, I bet. So the bonkers thing about luck is that it's back to this idea of expectations. If you think something is lucky, you will actually perform better. Like if they tell golfers, this is a lucky ball, they will actually hit better. And so you can make your own luck by just deciding that something is lucky and making it your lucky thing. So, because I do love the sense of smell, I went to this like bonkers, I wouldn't even say he's a perfumer because the name of his company is CB, I Hate Perfume. So he makes smells. And I have one that I love, it's called Black March, and it is like a vial, and it is the smell. If you went outside on a frozen March day, and it was getting ready to rain, and you can smell the dirt and the dead leaves, that is that smell, Black March. Wow. And somebody said to me, but what do you do with it? And I said, I just smell it. You know, I don't know who else does it, but I just smell it. But so he has an accord. An accord is like a building block for a perfume. So he had an accord called Hay. It is the most beautiful smell I have ever smelled in my life. It's like sweet, honey, hot, summer, leafy, grassy hay.
Wow.
It's so beautiful. And I'm like, I never allow myself to smell it or wear it unless I need luck. And that's my lucky perfume. And I wear it when I need luck. And I'm like, I need my luck today. And I put it on. And
Are
I
you
have
wearing it tonight?
No, I don't travel with it. It's too precious.
And you don't need luck.
And I don't need luck.
Yeah.
No. But I do put it on. And then I have a lucky cube. That's like family luck. We all touch that for luck. They're very patient with me. I just announce these things, and I'm like, okay, well, we'll run along with it.
Yeah, the research on luck is fascinating.
Right.
People who are luckier tend to score higher in openness to experience.
Yeah.
And so they tend to not avoid uncomfortable experiences much. I feel like this relates to your work so much.
Right.
They're not avoiding the senses,
Right.
even if it's uncomfortable.
Right.
Because, you engage more in life over the long term, something's going to pan out.
Right. In
hopefully.
conversations with other people, a lot of times you find lucky combinations with people.
You don't find luck if you never,
Right.
like my mom says, you won't find a girlfriend if you never leave your apartment.
Right.
Somehow that felt relevant.
Right.
So ketchup.
Oh, yes.
When I smell ketchup, I'm like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
How many different things
Yes.
are very complex?
Yes. So, I had a hard time giving a title to this book, and one of my sister's favorite title was "Why Ketchup is Magic," because I am so now extremely respectful of ketchup, Heinz ketchup. So, 97% of Americans have ketchup in their fridge, and Heinz ketchup is the most popular brand. And Heinz ketchup is the rare item that encompasses all 5 of the basic tastes. So it's sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and umami.
Wow.
And that is very hard to do. You can think of 4, like a margarita is 4, but no umami. It's very hard to get to 5. And so I had a taste party with my friends, and one of my friends who's kind of a foodie, she said to me, because one of the exercises that I had people do was to just taste ketchup and see if we could perceive all 5. And she said to me, if I didn't know that this was ketchup, I would have thought it was very expensive and very sophisticated because there's so much going on.
So much.
And I was like, the next time I have a taste party, I'm going to turn out the lights and have people taste it and see if they can identify that it is Heinz ketchup without the context, because it's something so ubiquitous. We all have all this ketchup packets just falling out of our glove boxes left and right.
So true.
Yes.
So true.
And you don't stop and think, why is it the secret ingredient of so many foods? Why is it something that is so ubiquitous? It's because it is so sophisticated and encompasses so much. It's really extraordinary, and it's something that all of us can experience at any time.
Do you find that with espresso too? A good espresso? I feel like it has
I guzzle bad coffee. I don't know. Yeah, and I have to say,
cut that one.
Yeah. But others fine. Yeah.
Why? Something else that really fascinated me in reading your book is you talk about how ugliness can be beautiful.
Yes.
Can you unpack that a little bit more? Because I feel like we avoid that sense. In a sense, is a sense that something's ugly,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But why should we maybe not avoid that?
Well, this was sort of this is one of these examples of how, and when this happens, where every once in a while, a whole bunch of unrelated facts will click together, and it's so satisfying. So, because I go to the Met every day, so that was that was probably my most ambitious exercise. I go to the Met every day, and one of the things that's great about going every single day is that it's fascinating to see it change over time very gradually. I'm very interested in repetition, but it also can be kind of boring. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that really helps with creativity is to have a little bit of boredom, because that's when your brain starts making unexpected connections and surprising juxtapositions, because it's sort of trying to amuse itself. So I was walking through a gallery that I'd walked through a million times, and all of a sudden it occurred to me that the beautiful often requires a little bit of ugly. And I was processing, can I come up with 5 examples of this? So with sight, there was this hilarious thing that they did in Australia. They wanted to create the most repellent possible cigarette packaging because they were trying to make cigarettes as unappealing as possible. So they set out with the aim of deciding what is the ugliest color. Which to me, I'm like, that's a nonsensical question. But they were like, what is the ugliest color? And the ugliest color they came up with was, I believe it's Pantone 338C.
Oh, wow.
And which is affectionately called baby poop. It's like a brownish green. But I walked around the Met, and some of the most beautiful masterpieces there use this color. Like the Mona Lisa famously uses this color, but you can find it in the Met. So that's that. Hearing, dissonance, which is to Western ears is very kind of unsettling, is often used to great effect, like in Stephen Sondheim. And it's very, very powerful, even though it's kind of an ugly sound. That gives it its power. For smell, in my perfume class, one of the things he said is a lot of the most beautiful perfumes have something, an ingredient in them that smells terrible. And often, like, you don't want to know where they come from because it's not an appealing source. But they add depth to the perfume. With taste, a lot of times, if something's sweet, you add a little bit of bitter. Or if sweet, you add a little bit of sour. And it keeps it from being overly sweet. It really deepens it.
Does this relate to maybe Susan Cain's idea of bittersweet?
Yeah.
Like existence is kind of more beautiful than
right.
Always being,
yes,
always
metaphorically,
happy.
right. That you need to have that melancholy. Yeah.
Always had to drop
bittersweet.
Susan Cain.
Yeah.
Our mutual friend.
Yeah.
How can we listen more or listen better?
Yeah. Well, this was like a personal aim of mine because of everything that we do with our sense of hearing. Listening to other people is probably the most important. And and whenever I have something that is like really important that I want to like figure out how to do, I make a manifesto. I've got a manifesto for everything that's important.
You've got a 12 principles for being you.
Oh, I've got my 12 personal commandments. I got
the commandments. I tried that the other day.
Oh, you did?
I had trouble getting past number 6, but I.
Oh, I want to hear the first 6.
Oh.
Okay.
After a couple of drinks.
Okay. B. Scott should be number 1. So I did a manifesto for listening where I really distilled down the principles. And so some of them I think are pretty obvious, which is like, show that you're listening. So one of those things is like, if you're like,
I want to do it right now.
You want to like square your shoulders.
Square the shoulders.
So that you're facing somebody.
Look like I'm listening.
Because have you ever been at a party where they're really like, they're talking to you like this? And you're like, you're not really,
I feel so awkward when that
you're on the way out. So like, square that. Put down your book, put down whatever. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. You're
what
listening.
else?
You're listening. Interesting research about phones that even if a phone is face down, if it's visible, people are distracted by it. Like you want to put your phone away and out of sight.
That's true.
And then some of them were more idiosyncratic, which was to me, for like one thing that I realized about listening is that even before I'm aware I'm doing it, I have a very strong tendency, if things start to get feeling dangerous, like sad or uncomfortable, or like I will begin to move the conversation onto safer ground, even before I'm aware to do it. And I still do it, but now I'm kind of like aware that I'm doing it.
As
and I'm trying to bring
being with
not just
whatever is coming up for this person.
So allowing allowing an uncomfortable silence.
Yeah.
Paraphrasing, like, well, it sounds like that was really upsetting. It must have been very frustrating, that kind of thing. And another thing that I realized, and this is also very idiosyncratic for me, is I will often rush in with a reading recommendation. Like that's my thing that I will try to do to help. Yeah. And so it's like, you're getting a divorce. Oh, have you read this? And like, oh yeah, my child's really unhappy at school. Oh my gosh, I've got a book for you. And then but that is also my attempt to like get onto safer ground, because now we're going to talk about a book.
I've noticed you do that with quotes.
I do that with quotes too.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, that reminds me of what Jemison said in 1422.
No, I do it all the time. And if like I'm on the phone with you, I'll be like, okay. And somebody will be telling me something really important. And I will be like, I will be secretly looking for it on my computer. And now at least I will say, I'm sorry, I can't listen to you. I'm distracted by my desire to go look up and see what like this Flannery O'Connor quotation is. And then I will read it to you. And then it's like, you don't care. But because
I
we're
care.
trying to have a
I care.
conversation, but it is one of, it's like, it's an attempt to connect, but it's not as good as just listening. And I can email you later with a quotation. I can email you later with the book if I think it's something that's going to be helpful to you. That's fine. But I need to just stay in the moment and listen. And so understanding that those are kind of my coping mechanisms has been helpful for me to say, like, no, listen, and when in doubt, stop talking. That's the most important one.
I love that. Have you put some thought into how this can help, like, families during holiday time? They all have different political opinions, and because I feel like that's a big thing right now in this country. Like, family members are not talking to each other anymore. They're not listening to each other. And they're fighting. Yeah.
Well, but I think this is where you could also do sensory things, because again, it's like everybody can contribute, everybody has an opinion, and yet we can talk about something that we're all sharing that's different, and that can bring us together. One of my favorite, somebody mentioned this, a listener of the Happier podcast suggested this, and I thought it was such a great idea. So when they have a holiday meal, instead of having like apple pie or pumpkin pie or whatever, you know how there's all this bonkers ice cream flavors, and you're like, I really want to try cream corn, but who wants to commit to a whole cone, let alone a container? So they would buy containers of this ice cream and pass it around, and each just have a few bites, and then they would talk about it. And it's like, that's fun, and you can be a toddler, you can be a grandparent, you could be very different in your political views, but you can weigh in and talk and debate about something that you're experiencing. And I think that's one of the reasons, you know how more and more there are these things that are immersive experiences?
Yeah.
And there's just like, there's a new one, there's like immersive Monet I just walked by the other day that I had not seen before. And like museums also will have museum exhibits that are immersive. And I think that that's why. It's like whatever age, whatever educational level, whatever even level of interest. You don't even have to be interested in art to go to immersive Van Gogh or whatever, or to a science experiment about like the immersive experience of color, because it's just going to be like a cool, fun thing to do. It's something where we share it and we can connect through our experiences that we're having together, but we're talking about something that we're experiencing that way instead of, and maybe that gives us a way to connect.
Yeah, there's something about transcendent experiences that transcend political views.
Right, well, it's sort of like, you got to talk about something. Yeah. This is something good that we can all sort of talk about together.
Yeah, I love that. And then you make playlists, right? You have...
not many, because I'm not that much of a music person, but I have done...
You have a special playlist.
Yes. So because, as you know, there's so much research about the power of music for our mental health, our physical health, our emotional health. It's just, it's like listening to music is one of the quickest, easiest ways to intervene in your mood. So I thought, okay, to cure the blues, I'm going to create an audio apothecary, and it's going to be my songs that I can just count on.
What a great name.
Yeah. To always make me feel better. And my first one was Dolly Parton's Mule Skinner Blues, which is like the happiest song if you ever hear it. It's so fun. She like yodels in it. It's so great. And it's my list is on Spotify. You can look it up and listen on Spotify if you want. And it's funny because people will say like, how could you possibly do this and not include this XYZ song? So clear, like, and this is a thing that a lot of people do. It's like, and they'll create playlists for a lot of different moods. It could be, I wanted to have one for like a happy, high energy mood, but people have it for like reflection, bittersweet. There are all kinds of ways to harness the power of music. And I think but the thing is, I think a lot of people do that, but I had never done that. I had 36 songs on my smartphone, just to give you an idea. I did not listen to music that much. I did not take advantage of its power. And now I understand much better why and how to do that.
Well, you're such an inspiration. I've noticed in all your books, you're always constantly trying to be better. Or you're trying to, even better is too much pressure, right? But you're always trying to...
Trying something.
Right. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
It's like, even if it doesn't necessarily make you better.
Yeah.
But you're always trying more, and getting outside your comfort zone. I absolutely love that about you.
It's fun. Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah.
It's a theme that runs through all your
Well, they say
stuff.
Research is me search,
they do.
and that's definitely like,
Definitely true.
I definitely have figured out a way to make my personal challenges into professional projects.
Oh, yeah.
And that's great. Yes.
My first book was called Ungifted. So
Oh,
I get it. I get it.
Yeah. It's not a bug, it's a feature.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not even joking.
Yeah.
So I feel you. I feel you. Tell me about the Muse machine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
This is so
I know,
fun.
I love
Okay.
that.
So I'm very interested in research about how when we find ideas easier to grasp when they are literally easier to grasp. So if they're if professors are trying to explain physics, they show models that show it in action. Or if you go to the ear doctor, they'll have a model of an ear to explain to you how things work. Like we use our bodies to understand high abstract ideas. And one kind of a form of abstract idea that I had going was I had noticed that in my writing, sometimes I would become creatively stuck. And often, like, some idea would just kind of cross my path, or, you know, somebody would say something, or I would encounter something, and all of a sudden it would, like, unleash an idea for me. And, like, one great example was I was trying to write a biography of Winston Churchill, and I was just overwhelmed by all the material because there's just unbelievably vast amounts of material about Churchill. And my college roommate was writing her PhD thesis, and she said, oh, well, I have a Post-it note stuck to my computer that says, down with boredom. And I thought, well, you know what I could do? I could just skip the boring parts. This is like a revelation to me. So I had this list of all these creative prompts that at first it was things that had helped me, like break the frame, skip the boring parts. But then I started adding ones that I would encounter in different places, you know, divided into 7 parts, change the order of ideas. And so I was putting these into my computer. I was typing them up. But this kind of was unsatisfying. It was kind of this ghostly list. And also, I create stuff like this all the time. So I was like, at one point, I'm just going to forget that I even have it. Like 6 months will go by, I'll never think of it again, and it will just like die in my computer. So I decided I wanted to somehow make it tangible. I wanted to like make these ideas more powerful by somehow making them tangible. And I was home in Kansas City visiting my parents, and I came across my father's ancient Rolodex. And there is nothing more satisfying than a Rolodex. It is like such a cunning contraption. And so I thought, that's what I'll do, is I'll put my ideas in a Rolodex. And so I got the circular kind that you rotate. So satisfying. Then started copying all my ideas onto these cards, and the idea was I would just, and you know, we all like to roll around dice. We all like to have the universe tell us what to do. So I thought, okay, well, the next time I'm creatively stuck, I'll just spin the wheel, pull a card, and follow the directions. And so I created this, so fun. And then I thought, but what do I call it? Because I was calling it, the document was called Indirect Directions. And then I was thinking, well, maybe I should call it the Rolodex of Ideas. But both of those were kind of boring. So I was like, okay, I'm creatively stuck. What should I do? So I spun the Rolodex, pulled a card, and the card said, find a fresh metaphor. Okay, so I couldn't think of one for a really long time. I stuck it on my bulletin board that's right by my desk, and I would just look at it. And I liked that too because it kept it uppermost in my mind, having like a physical, reminder of it. And then I was at the Met one day, and there's this beautiful inkstand with Apollo and the Muses, and it's this big inkstand, and it's got all kinds of like cunning little drawers and cubby holes for all your like writing implements and your ink and everything, and it's covered with little representations of Apollo and the Muses and like various, you know, major poets. And I was just standing there looking at it, and I love cunning little compartments, and I was looking at it, and I thought, well, that's the perfect thing for anybody who's trying to write, because what do you need? You need all these muses at your disposal. And then I thought, that's the name, a muse machine.
Muse machine, I love it.
So that's the Rolodex.
I could see a Netflix special about it.
Yeah, there you go, yeah. But it was just so satisfying, and I was like, that's my metaphor.
Yeah.
It's a muse machine.
I mean, how you come up with these names for all sorts? I got a whole list here. Manifesto for Learning, Taste Timeline, a 5-sentence journal. And then I mean, where does this stuff come from?
Well, you know, and it was almost like kind of ungovernable because as I was going on, one of the things that I realized is that, so when I started, I thought, oh, I'll use the 5 senses. But what I found is like with almost any aim that you're trying to achieve, you're trying to get closer to other people. You're trying to evoke memory. You're trying to pump yourself up. You're trying to calm yourself down. You're trying to spark your imagination. You're trying to be more productive and focused. There's a way to harness the five senses in order to do that, which is great because I feel like sometimes there's an aim that we have, and we want that aim, but it feels all very abstract and transcendent, and you don't know how to go about it. But the five senses is very concrete. Like, it's very much like what is actually going to, and so it's very energizing too. It's very like in the body. And so the more I studied them, the more I kept coming up with new ideas and new exercises. And so by the end, I was just like, I could just be writing this forever because I keep thinking of new things that I want to do.
Well, you are so creative.
Oh, well,
And
thank you.
You are. And you do talk in the book about how sometimes harnessing the power of the senses can make you more creative. Using your hands can increase imagination.
Yes.
Let's zoom in on that one for a second.
Yeah. No, and here's a fascinating thing that I discovered that's super fun and very useful. So, again, if you're creatively stuck, and creatively stuck, that sounds very kind of like lofty, but sometimes you're creatively stuck because you've got to write a toast. You've got to write a holiday newsletter. You've got to give a presentation. You need like a little anecdote to open up your talk to, your colleagues or whatever. So you're like trying to come up with some idea. A thing to do is you go to a place where you can experience it, like a store, where there's a lot of tools and materials for creativity. But here's the nice thing. It doesn't have to be something that you yourself know or want to use. So you could go to a hardware store. You could go to a thrift store. You could go to a farmer's market. You could go to a department store. You could go to an art store, a craft store, and just like while you're there, so you're at the hardware store and you've got the hardware store smell. Nothing smells better than a hardware store. I love this hardware store smell.
Really?
And then you put your hands in the bins
Do you like
of
gas
screws.
stations as well?
I love the smell of a gas station.
I suspected.
High controversy, though. How many people really do not like the smell of gasoline?
Do not.
Yeah, a lot of people do
How
not.
many
I
like
like
it?
the smell
How
of
many
gasoline.
like it, though?
I like the smell.
I
It's
do. I
a
kinda
high
like
controversy.
gas. I don't know about
Yeah.
hardware stores, but
Yeah, no, but hardware store very connected. But then you see all the tools, and you can like touch like the bristles on the paintbrushes and the rollers, and you see people building stuff and making stuff, or you're at a farmer's market and there's all the, I never cook, but it's like there's the materials and there's the honeycomb and there's the strange vegetables you've never seen, and it just unlocks the imagination in some way, and especially if you can like touch the stuff. With a lot of these, there are things that you can touch. There's smells, and it's just all the possibility. It just unlocks the mind. It creates associations just by being these rich materials. Even if you walk out with nothing and no plan to you're like, I'm not going to build a diorama from this craft store, but it doesn't matter. You can still get the creative spice from it.
so good. As you know, I love creativity.
Yeah. No, right. Yes. You wrote the book on creativity.
True, but but I love your creativity. So I feel like a constant struggle for all of us is like we want to accept who we are, but we also just don't want to like sit there the rest of our lives.
Yes. Yeah.
We want to like grow.
Yeah.
I want to read a quote from you actually.
Okay.
Gretchen in her book, she writes like, who am I? To be Gretchen, I must both accept myself and expect more from myself. To strive to embrace the realities of my nature will also enlarge my sense of possibility. That is brilliant, by the way. That is just perfect. Every word there is perfectly placed. So is this a constant sort of thing in your life where you accept who you are, but you use that as a route to growth as opposed to stagnation in a way?
Yeah, and I feel like this is one of the great challenges, because it's like, where do you say, this is just the natural limitations of my nature and it's who I am and I need to accept it? And when do you say, like, I really do need to step out of my comfort zone? I really need to do something unexpected and surprise myself. So one thing that I did, and I don't really talk about it in the book, because it didn't really pan out from a five senses perspective, but it definitely panned out in a Gretchen stepping out of her comfort zone way, was I tried ayahuasca.
You did?
I did.
Wow.
In a major way. Yeah, it was a whole thing.
I'm
it
so
was
proud
a
of you.
whole thing.
Did you do the toad as well? Yeah.
Just the ayahuasca.
Okay.
So, but I was full of dread. But I was like, and I almost wondered if it was like cheating, because the reason that I wanted to do it is I was like, if I do this, I think I can take my five senses to a place that I could never get on my own, or I could like really accelerate it. But I'm like,
Sure.
but is that kind of cheating? Because isn't my whole thing that I want to find this within the bounds of my ordinary existence, and like, what does it mean to be sort of artificially, jacked up? But then I thought, well, spirit of inquiry, it'd be really interesting to do, and it would be I would be surprising myself. And so it was like a whole thing, and I really, really was filled with dread. And it was a whole thing. I'm not even going to go into all the details, but like figuring out how to hook myself into that whole thing, and then taking it. But then what happened was, it's the middle of the night, and I am kind of an early to bed, early to rise person. This thing is happening in the middle of the night. I don't even know what time. And take it in this tea, which tastes terrible. Instantly throw up 3 times.
That's supposed to happen.
Fall
right?
asleep,
Yeah.
wake up totally normal. Miss the whole thing. Yeah.
Are you serious?
I'm totally serious.
That's not supposed to happen.
I don't know.
The throwing up, I think, is supposed to happen, but I don't think you're supposed to miss the whole thing.
I don't think so either, but that's what happened to me.
I have some friends out here who I know they've done it.
No, but so I don't know if I just like I got rid of it so quickly, or my body was like, you know what, this is just not going to happen. Like down
Peace
you go.
out.
Yeah. But I truly had like game planned it a million ways in my mind. This I did not see coming, and yeah. So from but to your point. From a five senses perspective, as an experiment for that, it was almost a complete nothing. But in terms of me surprising myself, and me being like, Gretchen, you can do something you never thought you would do.
Yeah.
You're going to go out there. You're just going to submit to the process.
You submitted.
Let things unfold. And
you surrendered.
I did. I mean, there were other people. It was a whole
I'm proud of
journey.
you. I'm proud of you. Did everyone watch you pass out?
No, I know. I mean, no. Everybody was like
They're doing their own trips.
They were doing their own thing. Yeah. But it did enlarge my sense of my own possibilities, because I was like, you know what? I didn't think I had it in me, but I did.
I love it. We have this. We teach this course on the science of transcendence, and when they graduate, we call them transcenders. I feel like you're a fellow transcender.
Well, thank you.
Yes. I'm going to read another quote from you. You say, once in a while, in the midst of an ordinary day, an object or action will take on transcendent meaning. That is so beautiful that can happen to you. What are things that people can do to make it more likely that the banal, everyday, that you see the same thing over and over again, that it can kind of snap into that transcendent meaning?
I think it's just by trying to pay attention, so that you're not, I feel like for me the risk is that I'm just so preoccupied with my own to-do list, my petty grievances, that I just am not looking for things or being aware of things that are freighted. Because every once in a while it does happen, and it is extraordinary when it happens.
Yeah.
But you can miss it because it's often fleeting.
It seems to me that those moments are most likely to happen when we somehow aren't so focused on our self-doubts. Right? We somehow are focused outside of ourselves. We kind of lose ourselves.
Yeah.
So much of what you talk about in your book is actually helping us get outside of ourselves.
Yeah. What's interesting, like just to pick like kind of an almost comical example of things becoming transcendent. I love The Office. If everybody loves The Office, There's a moment where, and often with transcendence, it's like
The Office comedy series?
Yeah, the Office
Oh,
comedy series. Okay, do
I
you
just
know
wanted
the
to make sure.
No, do you know The Office?
Because everyone here is like, we
Yeah,
hate
yeah,
The
do
Office.
you know The Office?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Just to clarify.
so you have to watch, you have to be watching, like the thing about transcendent is often it comes from a lot of context. Like it doesn't come out of nowhere, like things are building toward it. So you have to bring a lot to it. So there's a moment in The Office. So Angela is this very, very difficult, very prickly, very judgmental character. And she has all these arguments with her coworker, Oscar, who's also kind of prickly, but not as prickly as she is, whatever. And she's really, really down on her luck. And, she annoys him so much, but he's like, you know what? Come stay with me. Bring your kid, come stay with me. You'll have your own bedroom, you'll have your own separate bathrooms, it's fine. And she said, you don't want me to come stay with you. And he said, not forever, but until you get on your feet. And she just reaches over and puts her hand on his hand and nods. And it's this beautiful moment. And then in Mad Men, there's the most famous episode, The Suitcase. They've had this whole thing. And Betty broke up with her boyfriend, and Don is drunk out of his mind, and they fought, and they fell asleep together, and everything. And then the next morning, he's in his crisp white shirt, and she's like got her hair all messy, and he's like, go home, take a shower. But first, let me show you this drawing. And she looks at it, she's criticizing it, and goes, why are you giving me such a hard time? And they're talking about it. She's like, it's good. She looks at it, and he just puts his hand on hers, just looks at her, and like there's just this moment, and I think that the power in this drama, like or comedy, like to capture that moment, but to look for it, but it's all designed for you to present that to you, but to see it in your own life is sometimes it's easy to miss, but then you can find it when like there's just a moment of connection, or like even an object will kind of have this like Jungian significance.
Yeah, my favorite psychologist, Abraham Maslow, talked about how the ability to see the miraculous in the everyday is the highest form of transcendence we can actually have. And you do talk in your book about that arc from the ordinary to the sublime.
Yes.
And I love that word, the sublime.
Yes.
So I'm so glad you used that.
Yeah, and just trying to see it in the everyday. Because we know it's there. It's so easy to ignore.
It's good to know that it's there, though, as well.
Yeah.
Like there's something really comforting to know that even if we're not feeling it, we wake up and the neurochemicals are not.
Right.
It's like not like.
Right.
I woke up this morning. I was like, I'm not feeling today. But,
Right.
But it just happens. But then knowing that.
Yeah.
The sublime is there.
Yeah.
It's around us. Yeah.
One of my favorite, maybe my favorite object in the Met is a statue called God Horus Protecting King Nectanebo II, which is not the most poetic name, but it's this pure. It's just these pure lines, these just stern lines, and it's this giant falcon with this little pharaoh nested between its claws, and it just looks it does look sublime. It really represents that, and it's just like sometimes you can find an object that can capture that.
Well, Gretchen Rubin, you are sublime.
Aw.
And, thank you so much.
Thank
for this
you.
talk.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Scott. Thank you.
We have. Oh, look at that.
Well, thank you.
They love ya. We have about 15 minutes for questions.
Quick reminder about questions. Around here, they
Great.
typically begin with a W or an H, sometimes a D. They are generally short. We can smell a two-part question from a mile away and do not believe in them. And tonight, only Scott gets to ask follow-up questions.
And you get a gold star if you ask the first question, because nobody wants to be first.
Oh, well, I think she gets a gold star right back there.
There we go. All right.
Is there anything that you wish you would have included in the Happiness Project now that years have passed that isn't in there?
Oh, so many things. So many things. Yeah, I mean, well, a lot of it I put in Happier at Home, because then I was sort of building it. Because what I realized is it's hard to be happy if you're not happy at home. Yeah, so there are a lot of things that I feel like I wish that I had understood. I think the biggest thing that I didn't understand when I wrote the Happiness Project was the degree to which each of us has to have our own happiness project. I was still at that point trying to find, like, well, what's the best way?
Yeah.
what's the most efficient way? What does the research shows works best? And what I've really come to believe is there is no one right way, there is no one best way. We can all learn from each other, and it's really interesting to hear about the research, but in the end, what works for you may not work for me, and just because something doesn't work for you, it's fun for you, doesn't mean it's fun for me, and so that each of us has to do it ourselves. So I think I would have focused much more on self-knowledge instead of thinking that it was a matter of like getting the research right. The research is really great, but a lot of times there's a lot more, you have to bring a lot more self-knowledge to it than I realized at that time. At that time, I didn't know I was an upholder, which I mean, now I feel like is a major thing that I should have had informing that project.
That's a good question.
Hi, Gretchen. I have a teenager who's pretty addicted to her phone. I think you still have a teenager too, maybe?
Yes.
What are the Five Senses recommendations that you have for engaging teens more with like the world outside of the, the hard rectangle?
Okay. So I'll start with some suggestions for how to make the phone less compelling, and then like how to make the outer world more compelling. Okay. So one of the great things you can do, or you could encourage your teenager to do, is to set your phone to grayscale. This is fascinating because your phone will be in black, white, and gray. It's very easy to do. And it's like using your grandparents' black and white television set. It's very, very cumbersome. It's much less appealing, so it's much easier to turn down your phone. Another thing is to work with your notifications so that you turn off your notification sounds. If you're, use your home screen as a reminder for what an aim is. So if your teenager has aims like wanting to read more or wanting to spend more time with friends or whatever it might be, to use your home screen as a reminder of that. And then delete soul-sucking apps or bury them way in so that you have to like swipe and like go into a folder. Because the research is hilarious. If things are even slightly more inconvenient, we are much less likely to do them. And if they are slightly more convenient, we're more likely to do them. Like there's one of the studies is like they did a study with salad bars, and if you were using tongs instead of a spoon, you would take less food because people like simply cannot use the effort to use tongs to like grab their whatever, their lasagna or whatever it is. So that's one thing. And then to make the world more immersive is, I think, in my experience, teenagers are often very full of self-reflection and very interested in self-improvement. Like, I have a lot of teenagers who read my stuff, and I think it is a time of self-reflection. And so maybe it's just to say, like, let's sit down and, like, what do you need more of in your life, and what would help you? Like, do you want more time in nature, and, like, what would that look like in your calendar, and like, do you have time to just like hang out and listen to music if you need to do that, or are you so busy? And so to try to help them figure out like what would that look like given the reality of their lives, because they seem to be very hungry for it, though maybe those are the people that I hear from. Just reminding them of the pleasures of the actual immersive world. As much as people talk about the metaverse, in the end, we're more interested in the universe, it feels like. Yeah.
Tell Zuckerberg that.
Yeah. I think he's getting the picture, actually, on that.
Yeah.
Hi, Gretchen. So since writing the Four Tendencies, what's changed in your perspective after creating that construct that's working so well for so many of us in understanding expectations and accountability? And you were talking about being an upholder, obliger over here.
Yeah. Okay. Biggest group.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I heard you on a podcast recently talking about how an obliger is really good to be with a questioner, because then they say, well, why are you doing that? And I just wondered what's changed in your perspective after, because I feel like once you put something on paper, in the book, and then I'm sure you continue, your perspective grows as far as that construct.
Yeah. And if you don't know what we're talking about with upholders, questioners, obligers, rebels, you can go to GretchenRubin.com/quiz and take the quiz and find out what you are and learn about it. But I would say that, and I have a gigantic document with all this like further thoughts and examples about the Four Tendencies, so I'm very much continuing to evolve that framework. I would say the number one thing that I have gained since I wrote that is my deeper and deeper appreciation for the rebel tendency. So rebels resist outer and inner expectations alike. And they're the opposite of mine, which is we meet inner and outer expectations alike. And so it was the most different from my own tendency. It was the hardest for me to understand their perspective. The deeper and deeper I've gone into it, the more I understand the power of it, the more sympathy I have for them about how they are the most misunderstood tendency. And I think a lot of times people are just like getting in their way, and if we would all just back off, let the rebels do their thing, they would be better off and we would be better off. But also understanding like the power that comes from that tendency and what I as an upholder can learn from it in terms of truly understanding what it means to resist outer and inner expectations. And that there is what I can learn from that as an upholder, what the other tendencies can learn from it, and why it does have so much to offer. Because it can be hard for others to understand how to collaborate and cooperate with it, because the minute I ask or tell you to do something, you're likely to resist.
I think I'm a rebel.
You could be. You definitely could be.
That's how I feel.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Do you feel like, do you ever...
With a cause.
Do you ever, well, you're probably, yeah. There's some rebels are like, I'm not going to do it if you tell me to, even if I want to. But some are like, I march to my own drummer. It doesn't matter to me what you do because I have to do what
My mom always says I march to a beat of a different universe. But do you see a difference between, I'm allowed to ask follow-up questions.
Yeah. That's right. We know that, right?
Hold on.
Which is very important to me as an upholder that we're following Ted's rules, which we are.
Do you see a difference between, I feel like there's a difference between a rebel, which I feel like I am, and a provocateur. Because I feel like provocateurs are a different beast, and they annoy me.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? The person who's just like on Twitter just for the sake of saying things to anger people.
No, and yes, and I know exactly what you're talking about. And there's certain people where you're thinking this is just their mode of expression.
Yeah.
And if I said I love movies are better than TV, they'd be like, no, TV's better. And if I was like, no, TV is better than movies, they'd be like, no, movies better. Like that's just their way of engaging.
They're not even authentically.
Well, and I think for them, they often feel like, oh, I'm surfacing unpopular opinions, or this is a way to drive a debate. I don't think that's actually related to the rebel tendency. That's
maybe another tendency.
It's what did I call this? I called it. I think I called it. Confrontational, conversational style, because some people just do that.
That's what it is.
Awesome. They just want to.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'm glad I asked my follow-up question.
But so, I don't think rebels necessarily do that. Cool. Often rebels, like, they're not even going to talk to you about it. Like, they're just off doing their own thing. I'm not even going to bother.
I'm in my own world.
Yeah.
Hi. Our culture has become obsessed with productivity. What have you noticed is the impact of connecting to your senses when it comes to slowing down and just being?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And so for me, because I am kind of rigid and like have this to-do list and like driven by my calendar, I decided that I had to build in time to wander. Like I had to make time to goof off. And the way that I did it was this exercise of going to the Met every day. So going to the Met was like, it was on the calendar, but once I was there, I could do anything I wanted. It could be short, it could be long. Some people would say like, well, if you go, you need to go and sit in front of one thing for 20 minutes and look at every detail. And I'm like, well, maybe one day I'll feel like doing that, but I haven't felt like doing that yet. But it's like, you could do it if you want it, but not me. And so, it was just recess. This was my recess time. The minute I walked through the doors, I'm just like, and sometimes people will say like, well, isn't that meditation? But it's actually, at least the way I do it, it's the opposite of meditation, because meditation is the attempt to discipline the mind, and you're trying to do something. And I wanted to like not do anything, not be thinking about productivity, not be trying to be focused, not having any particular aim at all, but just wandering around and doing what I want. But like, if I wanted to sit on a bench and look at my phone, that was fine too. I never did, because I'm like, why am I here at the Met if I'm going to sit and look at my phone? But I could if I wanted to. There were no rules about it. And so that's the way I did it, was by like carving out like a specific time to make sure that I did that. But I think a lot of people do it in different ways. But I think that thinking about the five senses can help you figure out how to build that in a concrete way, because I feel like making time for the present or disengaging with productivity, it can feel very abstract, and you're like, yeah, I want to do it, but what would that look like in practical terms? Like if I wanted to do that on Monday, how would I do it on Monday? And I feel like with the five senses, you could be like, I'm going to spend time in nature and I'll look at the clouds every day, or I'm going to listen to new music, or I'm going to, whatever it might be. Smelling, I don't know, that is pretty cool, because smelling is so quick. That's part of what's lovely about it. So I think that one of the five senses is a great way to create that open recess time that so many people are craving in the midst of like a drive to be productive.
Love that.
Yeah.
We have time for 2 more questions.
Okay.
Down here, hello. I was wondering about, like, within the state of heightened senses and like a sense of smell, how do you make sure to appreciate and enjoy the positive smells, but not let the bad smells overwhelm or frustrate you too often? I guess noise can kind of play the same role too. Just making sure not to let the bad overwhelm and shadow the good smells.
Right. That's
Great question.
It's interesting because something that I created after the book came out, after the book was finished and kind of in production, is this quiz called "What's Your Neglected Sense?" And you take this quiz and it will tell you what is your most neglected sense. And one of the aspects of the neglected sense is often that it is the sense that you are much more aware of the negative than you are interested in the positive. So, like my most neglected sense was taste, and so I was very aware of things I didn't like, but I never was interested in taste. I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to explore it. I never turned to it for comfort or pleasure or engagement. I was sort of mystified by other people's interest in it, but I was very aware of avoiding things that I didn't like. I very much eat the same food every day. And so I think sometimes when you're very aware of the negative, that can be a sign like, well, maybe this is an area where you could seek out the positive because it might be low-hanging fruit. The neglected sense is low-hanging fruit because it's not something that you're already using. I love the sense of smell. I'm already tapping into the sense of smell, but the sense of taste, it's like, if ketchup is a revelation to you, that kind of shows you where somebody's starting point is. But the other thing is also, I do feel like you can become more aware of the negative because you're just more heightened. But what I found is that as I become more aware of the sublime or the beautiful aspects of things, I had much more tolerance for the things that I didn't like. So I was aware of them, but they didn't bother me as much. Because I seem to have a greater range. Because I agree that sometimes with the senses, you don't want to experience the negative. But in what I found is that by experiencing more of the positive, the negative was kind of lifted as well, or just seemed like it was rounding things out. Maybe the beautiful requires a little bit of ugly. Maybe it's that,
Gretchen, I have a quick follow-up question to that.
Yeah.
Wonderful question. I work with autistic children, and they have sensory overload is a big issue.
Or either way, over or under, yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you for that clarification. So do you see any implications for working with people, even HSPs, highly sensitive people?
Right.
I know they're out there.
Yeah.
I'm one.
Yeah.
Where so some of the items on the questionnaire are literally, I get overwhelmed by senses.
Yes.
But maybe you can actually teach them to harness it a little bit more, not run away from it.
Well, this is such a specialized area, so it's completely outside of the, I don't want to go over my skis at all.
That.
Yeah. But it's very interesting because I've heard from a lot of people who will say that they have learned from like creating a sensory pack for a child with autism, where it's like you realize that many of us can benefit from thinking about how we can tap into our senses for more calm. But I think the larger issue is that we do all live in these different sensory universes, and there are things that one person might find very annoying and irritating or completely overwhelming to almost make it hard to proceed. But I might be like, I don't know what the big deal is. Why are you making such a big fuss? It's not, it's nothing. To realize, like, no, each person is in a different universe. And so if somebody is finding it overwhelming, draining, difficult, unpleasant, to show consideration. And also for yourself, if you're like, I don't understand, everybody else can deal with it, but it's a real problem for me, to understand, like, we'll cut yourself slack. And, like, we can't always control everything, but to the degree that we can we create an environment where everyone can thrive? I mean, if somebody was just, and this is a minor example, but somebody who really loves music was saying to me that when he goes to a restaurant, like, the playlist for him is just as much an aspect of enjoyment as the food is, and that if he doesn't like the taste in music, he can't enjoy the taste of the food. I'm like, I know if it's not too loud, I notice it if it's too loud, but I don't notice the music as like an element. But I notice the light. I've been in places I'm like, we have to leave. The light in here is so ugly, my eyes are watering. And people will be like, what are you talking about? Because they're like very focused on the food or whatever. And so to realize, like, to show. So I think that there's sort of where you see it really playing out, but it's really something that we all need. I mean, one thing, I love the sense of smell. I don't wear perfume during the day anymore to go out because so many people don't want to.
Except the black, what's it called?
Black March. Well, that I just smell. I don't even put that on. But I wear perfume to bed because I love perfume. I love to wear perfume. But so I wear it at night, and sometimes I'll wear it during the day if I'm just like hanging around my apartment, which I often am. But if I'm going out to a meeting, I don't wear it because a lot of people don't want to smell your perfume. And so again, it's to show consideration. To me, it's fine. I like it when people wear perfume. I'm interested in that, but I know that a lot of people would prefer that I not. Yeah.
Cool. One more question.
And our final question for the evening.
And hopefully a good wrap-up one. What's next? What is piquing your curiosity?
Oh.
What do we have to look forward to from Gretchen next?
Oh, what a lovely question. Thank you. Okay. So a project that I'm working on that I'm not sure that anybody else is going to care about is a book of aphorisms. I'm writing a book of original aphorisms, which I love. Like, the more we know, the more we notice. So I'm doing that, but then that's kind of spiraled out of control because I'm now collecting my favorite aphorisms, and I'm collecting proverbs of the professions, and I'm collecting kind of like oddball information. I don't exactly know how I'm going to turn it into something. This is incredibly unprofessional, by the way. I know better, but I can't resist, so I'm doing this out of love. I also wrote this odd little book called My Color Pilgrimage because I went through this period of being intensely interested in color, which I'm like just so vibing on your beautiful royal blue. And this is just this odd little thing. I don't know what I'm going to do with it, so I got to figure out what to do with that. And then my next major book that I feel like is so huge that I can't even really conceive of it yet is a book that's kind of about astrology, but it's kind of about the power of placebo because it's really about the power of our own mind. And I think I'm going to try to come up with my own system of fortune telling. But what that's going to look like, I don't know. But anyway, so I have
That's
like
exciting.
a near-term project and then this big looming project and then this funny little project. I'm all over the place, but I can't wait.
You
Yeah.
are sublime
Oh.
and one of a kind. Let's give it up again.
Thank you all. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Scott.